Hi, Maureen, we didn't hear you in the beginning. We can't hear you.
Look, let me try this again. Technology. And now?
Yes, I can hear you now. You're muted.
Sometimes I don't even understand what goes on. This thing is muted. Chinese products, you guys. Chinese products. Cheap and effective or ineffective. Honestly, if I was part of this effectiveness or efficiency program of who Elon Musk, I think I would be thrown away by now. All this equipment that we have, it looks really fantastic, but it's Chinese, guys. It's Chinese, and it's Chinese for Africa. So, Mr. China's, you guys are messing up your reputations here. Okay. So anyway, yeah, where would we be without China, though? Really, seriously. So, hi everybody, welcome to the show. Susan, welcome to the show. Today we're going to be talking about
Thank you.
surviving. Yeah, today we're going to be talking about relationships. And this time it's interesting because many people can relate. Surviving parenting or guardianship or, just looking after children, whether you're working for kids or, working with children, surviving it. How do we do this? What are the kinds of things that are in, what are the kind of challenges that we face when we are raising our children? Why is it that nobody prepares us for parenting? Parenting, I think, should be a class in school, just like marriage. It should be a class, it should be taught in school. Those of you who are watching us, thank you very much. You can see you there. And want to let you know that we'll invite you to the StreamYard. And Susan, I'll allow you to make any comments you have on parenting, because I know there are many, while I invite people on the StreamYard.
Okay, well,
Karibu,
welcome
Susan.
to the show. I'm happy to be here. Looking forward to a vibrant conversation. Yes, for sure. Parenting is no easy task. It was once said by somebody, I think it was a comedian. He said, when you go to buy a car or a TV, you're given a manual in several languages, so many languages in the world. But when you go to the hospital and have a baby, you're given the baby and told good luck, and that's the most valuable thing. you know they're saying, he was talking about even then, I mean, that I'm talking
That
about a
guy is a
show that
real
was
comedian
there.
because it's really true. That's true. Good luck. Here's your baby. Go. The most that you would get is instructions on how to register their birth certificate, and if you're a foreigner in a different country, how to register their passport. Or you will be asked, if you're a single parent, do you want to put the father's name or not? Or they'll be advising you one way, or they'll be telling you something like, are you going to be breastfeeding? That's just about it, really. Are you going to be breastfeeding, or how are you going to feed the baby? That they're more concerned about the baby than the parent, for sure, Susan.
uh, and the different styles, if you've had more than one child, the first time you went in, you were told this, this second time, oh, the baby should sleep on the stomach. The second time you're told, no, the baby should sleep on the back. The next time you're told, no, the next time you're told, baby should sleep on the side. So there's really a lot of, we need God's help in raising our children, because it is no easy task. Each child is very different if you have more than one. If you're a teacher, for sure, you know that each of your students are very, very, very different. And, and even the inter-sibling relationships are also very complex sometimes. The relationship between the parent and the child can also be very, very complex. And this, can affect how the child ends up being. And uh, even the position in which you are born could also affect a lot, about, you know, who you end up being, what type of child you end up being, what type of person you end up being, and so and stuff like that. So we should never take our families for granted. We should never take our relationship with our children. If you're a parent or an aunt, if you're a guardian, or somebody who's a caregiver to somebody, to a child or a younger person, uh, definitely, it's not an easy job. If you're a Christian, of course, you get your manual from the Bible. If depending on what faith you are, you may have counsel in your other books, in your respective religions, about how to raise your children. Um, and these could be, depending on how you interpret it, it could end up being good or bad. Because we know, for instance, the child who, the girl who ended up doing some mass shooting recently in the US was actually brought up in a Christian school. So it really depends on what's happening in that school, whether they're adhering to principles of the Bible or whether they've become so woke that, they've, derogated or moved out into other spaces and end up causing more confusion to the child and than they should. Of course, the issue of attachment is very key. And that sort of the type of attachment a child has with the parent really determines how they it dictates and influences how they will socialize, how they will what type of person they are likely to be at the end of the day. And this is barring
Mm-hmm.
other issues like mental, some what genetic issues that may affect your behavior
Mm-hmm.
because of the issues of like psychopathy and stuff like that, where the brain is not well formed and things like that. We're just talking about a child being influenced by society, by the upbringing of the way they're being brought up, and how it can nurture, make or break that child at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and I was just looking at the different types of, some of these attachment theory. It's something that was
Mm-hmm.
developed by somebody called John Bowlby, and it is the deep and enduring emotional bond that connects one person to another. This is a definition by John Bowlby. Bowlby, let me say Bowlby, because it's spelled as bowl and then B-Y. Attachment theory is the deep and enduring emotional bond that connects one person to another. Attachment um, is pivotal. It plays a pivotal role in shaping how a person relates to the world and navigates its challenges. So this means it's a very crucial thing. So he identifies various types of attachment. There's secure attachment. So what happens with the secure attachment is the child ends up feeling safe and protected. He trusts the caregiver or the parent, the guardian, whoever is looking after him. And because the parent or caregiver is available and responsive to their needs, and also they provide a safe base to explore the world. We know that often when things go badly in our lives as adults, or whatever age you are, there's a tendency to run home, the tendency to run back to your parents or to seek their counsel or to seek
Mm-hmm.
that person, the caregiver, depending on your situation. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so home is supposed to be a place of refuge. Home is where your parents, the people who love you, are. The
Mm-hmm.
caregiver is. That is in an ideal situation. Then the next type of attachment is insecure avoidant attachment. And in such situations, the child avoids closeness and intimacy with caregiver or parent because they have learned their needs will not consistently be met, which leads them to be self-reliant and avoid seeking comfort from the parent or caregiver. So that is the insecure avoidant attachment. Insecure avoidant attachment. The third is insecure disorganized attachment. And this is where a child will be noticeably, or people will be able to assess at the end of the day, or even the child is aware that they have experienced neglect and abuse. These children display a lack of clear attachment behavior, and they display confusion and disorientation in their interactions with their caregivers or parents. So the fourth one, I've talked about three so far. The fourth is insecure, ambivalent attachment. And this type of child ends up being very anxious, very uncertain about the parents' availability and responsiveness. And they seek closeness, but are weary of, of it. So this makes them a clingy person, and they have difficulty exploring things independently. The last, yeah. So what is recommended is that we, as a parent should understand attachment, the importance of attachment, and actively work to foster such a bond with their child, because it contributes to a stronger, healthier parent-child relationship and supports the child's development and well-being. For sure, I think in previous shows, Queen Moore has mentioned the relationship between a child who suffers, uh, you know, an insecure or a troubled childhood, and the outcomes we see from them as adults, the type of things and things they do. They end up not being able to cope well. They can end up not being able to handle stress. They're not able to handle their anger. They end up being not even able to have healthy relationships with others, and they end up, if doing terrible things to their intimate partners or spouses or even their workmates or anybody around them. And because of that, a fundamental issue, um, in their formation, in their formative years as a child. So that's maybe what I want to say up to now. I don't know. Maybe Queen Mo
Hmm.
can jump in and say
Hmm.
something else.
Yeah, Susan, I really enjoyed that, learning about the types of attachment styles. And this is something that's rarely spoken about. Whenever we hear videos or we watch videos about parenting, they don't actually, they always refer back, to, first of all, let me start from here. Whenever we see any misbehaviors in adults, usually you'll find that researchers and the media and psychologists always refer back to the way a child was brought up. Like if somebody was going to seek therapy or counseling, some of the first questions you're going to be asked is, what was your childhood like? How was your childhood? How did you grow up? You know, were you raised by two parents? Were you raised by a single parent? I mean, tell us about how you grew up. Tell us about your relationship with your mom, with your dad, or with your caregiver, whoever it is. Could be a grandparent, could be an aunt. It could be that you are an orphan. But the first questions they're going to ask you is about, I think they're trying to find out your attachment style, or whether or not you attached. And this applies not just to children, but even to marriage, to relationships. Attachment style is influenced by how we are also attached. So if we are products of insecure, ambivalent attachment, even if you get into a relationship or a marriage, you're going to also display or exhibit those kinds of traits, okay? Where you'll be close to this person, but you're still wary about it. You're not really sure. You'll even get married, but you're not even really sure. You're always clinging to your spouse. Eh? You cling to your spouse, and maybe this comes from the way you grew up. Maybe you didn't the people who are around you, your caregivers, your parents, were people who are not reliable. Yeah, one minute maybe they exhibited X behavior, and another minute so basically this comes from parents who are basically unstable as well, in the way that they attach to you, or the way that they bring you up. So there's also this secure attachment and trust the caregiver or the parent. That's the same thing, if you get into a relationship or you get into marriage, if you grew up in a secure environment where you were securely attached to your mom and your dad, or your caregivers, you'll have such a high level of trust that you might trust the wrong person and start feeling secure in your attachment to this wrong person. So it's very important to understand that raising children, the way you raise a child, is actually setting the course for the kinds of the relationships that are going to have in future. and how they're going to cope or not in them. Yeah. So, as far as possible, we should be trying our best to understand attachment, like Susan said. And I'm so happy that Susan started here because I wasn't going to start here. So, Susan, thank you for, taking the ball running and starting with the beginning, which is attaching. And the first thing that a child attaches to, usually or should attach to, is a mother's breast, which is feeding. The child's first thing that they attach to, that we see, that we understand, because we're not inside the baby's brain, is the first thing they do is they open their mouth and they're like, oh, they're looking for food, okay, sustenance. So the first thing they look for is sustenance and also for comforting. So if they have hands, somebody holds them, that's already attachment. They've attached to another person. The next thing is to attach with their mouth and with their ears and with their eyes. So all their senses are alive. You see babies struggling to see and moving their head to try to see. They're trying to attach. They're forming, looking for a place to attach. And sometimes even mothers who have lost babies, sometimes they also attach, like I did. I lost a baby, but we attached. She looked at me, I looked at her, we attached. Okay. So that attachment is there and it goes beyond the womb to when the child is, growing up. So again, that's the reason why women are so distressed when they're trying to breastfeed and the baby can't attach. Yeah. It's, I think it's a nature's way of telling a mother, look, this is a very important primal stage of your baby. And this baby must attach to your nipple. And you'll find mothers stressed out and not even able to produce milk because they're so stressed out, because they know primarily our primal instincts tell us that that is so important. Guys, I live with monkeys. Well, I live in a place where there are lots of monkeys. And we actually have, I think there's a women's group, a monkeys women's group that actually meets here. And all of them have babies and they are attached to their mothers. And you see them, attached upside down. They're breastfeeding, they're suckling. The mothers are always looking to ensure that they have that secure attachment. Yeah. And you see, one of the things that I've learned from the monkey family is that they're the most family oriented, one of the most family oriented animals. Yeah. That for them, family is everything for monkeys. When they come to greet you, they don't come alone. They come with their whole family and the extended family and all the wives and children. They all arrive. So if anybody calls you a monkey, yeah, take it as a compliment because or anybody calls you a monkey, really, it's one of the best things to be called because they are some of the most advanced animals and also some of the most humane. You call them humane or monkane, whatever. Yeah, they love each other. They look after each other. They discipline each other. There's a lot to learn from wildlife. So we call them wildlife, but from the animals that we live with. So if even
Yeah.
animals attach, what about us? So now the saddest thing is that a lot of people are not able to attach properly with their parents for one reason or another. And I think that we have seen that right now there is an assault of the older generation by the younger generation in Kenya. The younger generation in Kenya are always blaming the older people. Yeah, what do they call them? They blame the older people for everything, from governance, yeah, from the governance
Generation
style,
gap.
for jobs, not being able to find jobs, being selfish with jobs, being selfish with money, being selfish with property. Yeah. So the older generation, they call them the baby boomers. Yeah. The baby boomers are being blamed for like everything. Yeah. And the
Yeah.
Gen Xers
Post-war.
also want to ride the wave thinking that they are not parents, but actually they are. They're just right next to the baby boomers. So you'll find that the young generations, Gen Zs, are always blaming, Gen Zs and others are always blaming the much older generation, their parents, for their problems. And I believe that they never attached. That goes to show that they actually never attached to their parents. They had insecure, avoidant attachment, or they had secure, disorganized attachment, like Susan was talking about. What do you think, Susan? You're
Yeah, I
laughing.
just want
I'm
to
just trying
add,
to relate
yeah,
it.
the type of parenting which goes to really show how the attachment is occurring and why the attachment is can be categorized as we've described before, is the authoritarian parenting style. These are the very controlling and demanding parents who they demand obedience, and they don't consider the child's point of view at all. They determine what career path you're going to take. We had a lot of that when we were growing up, where the art subjects were considered, not to be as valuable as the science subjects. So you'd find people being compelled to do chemistry and biology and maths, and they were not very good students at it, and so they ended up now suffering some sort of crisis because they were pushed in one direction. And actually, when they went back and went into, say, the arts course, and they excelled at it, and they took a completely different career path, but they had to fail first because because the parents said so. We also have people going and doing degrees, say in medicine and other fields, and then they take the certificate, the degree, home to their parents and say, "Here's your degree. Now I want to do mine." You know, and so the controlling and demanding, that controlling parent who demands obedience, you can't question, you can't have a conversation at all. So they don't care about the child's point of view. That's the authoritarian parenting style. The second is the permissive one. This is the one who is so loving, and there's absolutely no control over the child. It gives the child every single thing he wants or she wants, and there are no rules. There are no rules. In fact, it's the child who's controlling the situation in that type of case. I think we call them spoiled children in the our parlance. We just say they're spoiled children. Um, and then there's the authoritative parents, and these are the parents who are firm but loving, and they encourage independence within limits. So they encourage children to think about themselves, their behavior, their responses is aligned to the developmental stage that the child is in, and it's age appropriate. They encourage them to make decisions. They encourage them to to interact. So they're very supportive. So they are firm but loving, and encourage independence within limits. The fourth is the neglecting parents. These are completely uninvolved and disinterested in the child. So we have those four. There's a fifth one. I didn't get that one, but I'm sure it has something to do with the modern way of living now. But those are the main four types of parents. And you can see from that, what I've described, the different types of attachment that these parents would have with the children, you know. And some of the causes for tensions within parenting, um, the definition of relational problems, parent-child relational problems, is a disruption in the typical patterns of interaction between a parent and their child. Thus, a disruption in the typical patterns of interaction between a parent and their child. So some common causes include, is what you call a complex interplay of factors that, for example, developmental child changes, quest for independence, external stressors, and family dynamics. Those are some of the triggers. The impact of sibling relationships can also exacerbate or alleviate this. So if you have a strong, if the siblings love one another, it cushions the struggle or the dynamics or the tension in the family. If it's a toxic relationship, it exacerbates it, so it makes it worse. So some of the triggers are unmet emotional needs, unrealistic expectations. You can have perhaps a child expecting something from the parents that not able to provide one way or the other for various reasons. It could be economic, it could be other factors which are, putting constraints. And unresolved past traumas, this could be childhood traumas. External stresses such as academic stress, we know that's a big one. Um, we have in the Far East, the Asian people, they're very, very demanding on their children's academic performance wherever they are in the world. Even here in Kenya, we have that. They're very, very demanding on their academic achievements. They want them to be this or that, and they're really, really pushed. Uh, from the among the Chinese people, I think they call the moms the tiger moms.
Mm-hmm.
Even in Australia, they have these extra classes, and they really push their children to to do really well, and it causes a lot of emotional stress on the children, and in some situations can even cause extreme emotional mental health breakdowns as far as
Susan, have you hanged? The internet is playing around with Susan over there, and she's talking about tiger moms. I think I'll let Susan. I'll remove her from the stage, and she'll come back on because this is just crazy. Yeah, yeah. That's how we live with internet issues, challenges. Susan will come back. So in the meantime, let's talk about what Susan is talking about. She's talking about the types of parents who cause us, the types of parenting styles that are associated, with these kinds of with these kinds of authoritative parenting, permissive parenting, neglectful parenting. These are kind of disruptions. She said they're disruptions of typical patterns of interaction between parents and their children. So she's talking about tiger moms, and I think many of us in Africa, we have not just tiger moms. In fact, we have tiger dads. And what do their tiger dads do? Tiger dads expect A's. They expect 100% from their children. They expect perfect behavior. They expect you to be saved, to go to church every Sunday. And in fact, if you don't go to church, you're going to face the belt. In fact, tiger dads in Africa and some moms, they use physical punishment, yeah, and they use physical punishment using tools such as belts, rods, sticks, yeah, to basically uh, ensure, to impose to impose power and authority on children. Yeah. And I think, let me also share something on the screen with you guys just to bring you on board. I don't know where you guys are. Is it today? Is today Friday? Is it a very important day and you've gone out and having a drink? And anyway, I'm waiting for you guys to come back. Yeah. After you have had your fun and you're looking for something to watch, here is a very interesting thing to watch and also very important. Yeah. Okay. So, okay. So, these are the kinds of parenting of child. Okay, this I was trying to look for something about where this gentleman was talking about the fact that we should not punish children, Oh, I think I might have missed it. Yeah.
oh yeah,
So,
the
but
various
anyway,
discipline styles.
yes,
Yeah.
disciplining
Mm,
styles,
yeah.
disciplining
Yeah.
styles vary. They vary. And sometimes what happens is that parents become overbearing and they make children scared of them, and that doesn't work. Yeah, scaring a child doesn't
Yeah.
work. It makes them actually harder in many cases. I hope that you'll be
That's
able to
true.
see this. Yeah,
Mm.
let me start it from the
Hitting
beginning.
or beating children,
Yeah, let me start
however
it. So listen to this. Authoritative
hitting or
parenting style.
beating children, however gently, is the cruelest thing you can ever do to a child. If their experience of being hit was reversed on you and proportionally adjusted for your size and your weight, you would never hit a child again, much less defend someone or even some scripture that do. As you interact with children, they will appreciate a lot if you can adjust for their world. You are a giant in their experience. Squat, bend over, walk, talk, and move slower. Wait patiently. More importantly, teach and remind the adults around your child to be sensitive to this world of children, and your child will thank you for it.
I tend to agree with this gentleman. that spare the rod, spoil the child has been, taken a little bit too far and sometimes misinterpreted. Yeah. That as much as children can really be, they can be very difficult, they can be a handful, and they can test your limits and your patience. I think raising children helps you to realize your strengths and your weaknesses. And I think if one can learn how to withhold, how to, hold on to their emotions, and sit back and take a drink, have a drink, watch the child do something crazy, and have the courage to wait it out, then I think it helps you to actually grow. But usually the first thing that we do is we just go with our emotions straight away, run after this
But
kid and deal with them right there. Deal with them right there. That happened to me when I was growing up, and I decided I wasn't going to impart this kind of disciplining on my child. This authoritarian discipline I didn't want to do. But I caught myself. I got caught on 2 or 3 occasions. I did. I went beyond, because I remember one time when my son was part of this friends of his. Was a single parent, and I was raising a boy. That was really hard. Being a single mom raising a boy is not a joke. And he's the only child. So what happened is that this boys we were staying in an apartment, and him and his wonderful friends decided that they were going to go and break a water meter. Yeah. And they went and actually broke the glass of the water meter that belongs to our landlord. And I was furious. I could not believe how furious I was. And what happened is that I found myself bringing him inside and giving him a proper thrashing. And the boy was so shocked that I did that, because he was how old was he? He was about 9 years old. Yeah, he might not be happy if you hear this. He wasn't really, he was like, "What did you just do to me?" you know, because he used to be very proud and say, "My mom doesn't beat me. Me, I'm lucky. I don't even have a dad." That's what he used to say in school. Can you believe this? He would come from school and tell me, "Mom, I'm really happy that I don't have a dad." Because I said, "Why?" "Because dads beat children." I'm like, "Where did you hear that from?" So the children who were raised by two parents, the story was that the fathers were actually, hunking down on those babies and spanking them. But for me, I actually perfected the art of speaking, talking to my child as much as possible. And in some cases, he would report himself to me. But 2 or 3 occasions, I found myself actually do that. And the second time or third time I did it, I said, "Enough, I was done." Because what happened is that I said to myself, this child is growing up. He's a boy. He's growing up. One day I won't be able to spank him, and he won't be listening to me. He won't learn to listen. He needs to learn to listen to what I have to say. So I think, we have to, as much as possible, try to resist, going by instinct and hitting your child. The rod can also be a mouth. Your mouth can also be a rod. Yeah. Showing the child is teaching the child is also a rod. It's just a rod is symbolic. It means that you do react. You react to bad behavior, and you react by saying, "No, stop it," by rejecting it. That's the rod. How you reject it, how you say no, that's up to you to decide with your child. And I know many children are, I know that there's some children who are more difficult than others. Some kids are real hard. Yeah, kichwangumus. Some of them are kichwangumu. But on the other hand, you as a parent have to teach them nonviolent methods of resolving problems and crisis. So it's always a test for a parent. So like Susan said, you go home not with a manual on how to raise your child, but you also learn from how you grew up and what it did to you. Because for me, as a victim or somebody who used to experience the belt from my dad as a very young age and regularly, I remember how it estranged me from him, how I didn't understand him. In fact, most of the time that he was raising his hand at me, he was this monster, coming at me with a belt. And if you're the firstborn child, you tend to be exposed to much more punishment, whether you're a girl or a boy. You get to be exposed to more punishment because you take responsibility for your siblings' behavior. Yeah, at least that's how the parents bring you up to believe that that your siblings are following in your example. And so you have to be the example to your siblings. So you always take more punishment. And it actually makes you become estranged from your parent. And yet when you grow up, you realize that this parent was completely innocent. They just did what they thought was right for you, and they didn't really mean it. But I remember when I came back from the US with my son, that time I was a single parent. When I left him here with my parents, the first thing I did was warn my dad. I said, do not touch this child. Don't, don't ever hit him. And he was so shocked. He said, what? Why? What did I do? What did I do? I mean, I said, don't ever do that, Dad. Don't ever do that. Yeah. And guess what? He didn't. He did not. Yeah. And the relationship that he had with my son is just amazing. Really super amazing. I think he was so shocked by my reaction because I was a young student, about 26 years old. I came back, I said to Dad, Dad, no, what you did to me was not right, because I was that child who always wanted to please you. So when I made a mistake, or when I did wrong, or when I didn't get 100%, and you're the scientist, when I didn't get my 100% in that class, you punished me unfairly. Yeah. And you see, it comes to them as a great shock. But for us, who are educated, who are exposed to the internet, who are exposed to counseling, to therapy, to therapists, to TED Talks, we should be educated, and we should understand that some of the things that we grew up with should actually be discarded. Yeah. And that even if, yes, discipline has to be there, but the type of punishment we give our children should be commensurate, first of all, to the charge, and also they should understand it. The worst is to see when little tiny children are actually beaten or punished. Some of them even get scalded. You'll see maids coming and scolding children. There was a video that was making its rounds in Kenya, where there was a maid who actually bent over, and she was caught bending over in a tiny little house where the parent had installed CCTV cameras, and she was breaking that child's legs, a child of 2 years old. Yeah, that video is actually in my phone, and I refused to watch it, because as soon as I saw that this lady bending over, I was like, what is she doing? I said, I'm not watching that. There's some things I cannot watch. But just to let you know that children at 2 years old don't understand mistakes. They don't understand. So you cannot judge a child of 2 years old like an adult of 20 years old. Yeah. A child is a child. You're a monster to them, actually. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, Susan, thank you so much, guys, for watching, and thank you for the thumbs up. Remember to thumbs up our videos, guys. Thank you. Welcome. And today is Friday, TGIF.
Yeah, you need to bring me on to the studio. Am I on? I'm not in the studio. Yeah, yeah, for sure. I agree with Queen Mo. Spare not the rod and spare the child. That that is has been highly misinterpreted. Actually, that means that we should discipline as parents. We should maintain discipline. That's actually required and is recommended for purposes of having a healthy child. When a child doesn't have boundaries, or doesn't respect boundaries, then you end up with a child who cannot cope or live in society, because there are rules everywhere, and they need to learn that from the earliest possible moment that they're able to. There's a saying in Kiswahili that says, and I'll say it in English, is that if you don't teach the child right at home, the world will teach them. And of course, we know the world lessons are much worse than a parent. Well, we'd hope. Yeah. So some of the things that you need to do is to develop positive discipline strategies, especially the teenage years. Those are that's a very complex age. I remember a joke. There was this preacher. He was teaching and he was preaching, and he was talking about just that, the biblical standards of raising children. And he said it would pass. And then one congregant, there was the question and answer section. She put up her hand and said, I'm so relieved to hear that teenage year phase of a child, they're very, very rude. For some reason, teenagers are very rude. And she said she was thanking God because That stage is going to pass. She thought her child would be rude for the rest of their lives. So it was quite a funny comment. So anyway, so developing positive discipline strategies, some of the it means you establish clear boundaries and rules in a calm manner, which means you need to take a breath and don't respond immediately. Sometimes not you need to just calm down first before you have a conversation. There's a difference between don't never argue with a fool. You may not tell the difference because you just end up shouting at one another. Somebody watching will not be able to tell really what's going on. So
Yeah,
establish
Susan,
clear
can I give an
boundaries.
example of this? Yeah, because you're
Mhm.
mentioning very important things, and it would be good to try to give examples. I mean, we have the benefits of hindsight because we've raised children, babies, teenagers, adults, literally. So I remember when my son was a teenager and he wanted to go out. Yeah. And he wanted to go out so bad. And then what did I do? Boundaries. Talking about boundaries, we would agree, no problem, you want to go out, who are you going to go out with? Yeah, where are you going to be? What car are you driving? Because at that time he had actually, one of the things he had to do was to learn how to drive. Once you get to 18 years old in this country, you can get a license. And if you have a car, yeah, you can teach your child how to drive. Or if not, then they can take Ubers. Yeah, they can take taxis. Teach them to drive. You agree with your child that they will be non drinking if they're driving. If they are the driving person, if they are designated to drive with their friends, they will not drink. They will not drink and drive. That's an agreement you have to come to with your children. And it's kind of like helps them to be responsible because you tell them, you sit down your child and you tell that teenage child they are responsible for the life. They're carrying lives, yeah, and including their own. So it's not just about getting caught by the police, it's actually ensuring that they are awake and alert on the road. It's very dangerous because they drive in some very dangerous times. Other things, responsibility of parents. Do not give a child a car that doesn't have brakes, that you haven't serviced, that has smooth tires, that if they break, they can't actually stop. Yeah? Don't give a child a car that doesn't have its mirrors intact so that they can see. Yeah? Don't give a child a car too young. Don't give a child a car that is too small. Yeah, that if they were hit, they have little way to survive. And it's not possible to give, if for example you don't have a car, then they should also be able to select the kind of taxi that's going to bring them back. Those are the kinds of things you agree on. The other thing you agree on with your child, you have to sit with your child and explain. Like, I remember we used to have these discussions with my son about shisha. That stuff that they smoke, shisha. Yeah. We're talking about teenagers. Yeah, this is real talk. This is real talk. And I remember there was a time my son was like, no, shisha is harmless. They give it at restaurants. Yeah, it's completely harmless. It doesn't have any, no, it doesn't have what? Tobacco. There's no tobacco in shisha. Do you know what I did, guys? I ended up going to a shisha club just to prove to my child that there is tobacco in shisha. Yeah? Many children and many parents don't know that there is tobacco. You know how I found out? Because I actually waited for the person who comes to replenish the shisha, the little shisha packet. I asked him for it. And because he had to take it back, I took a picture of that shisha. I noted down the ingredients in that shisha packet. And I had to come back to my child because I wasn't going to beat him. I wasn't going to like lecture him. I had to come back with facts. And I said, here are the ingredients of shisha. What's your favorite flavor? here, here is the ingredients. And in there, under there somewhere was tobacco. Yeah. And I said, that is the way that the industry introduces children into smoking through what they call harmless flavors. Yeah. Like shisha. So at that point, when my son had come, yeah, he had come from a shisha smoking spree with his friends, and his eyes were bloodshot red. Yeah. And he came home and he was looking at me, and a normally wonderful child, but his eyes were completely red and he was looking at me. I said, okay. So you understand that this here are the ingredients. I waited up for him, and he looked at me like, yeah, what are you talking about? In the morning, he finally agreed. He finally agreed with me, and he stopped smoking shisha. Yeah, he stopped because I had to prove to him he didn't want to become a smoker, and he didn't want to be smoking tobacco. After all, he was still underage. I think he was maybe 16, 17 when they were smoking that shisha. Do you remember where the kids were everywhere? There was shisha for children. I think it was eventually regulated at some point. Yeah. And so when you guys, talk to your children, talk to them with facts. Help them understand that you're on their side. I wouldn't stop my son from smoking this wonderful stuff that smells really nice if it was really truly harmless. But if I knew, like the same thing with electric cigarettes, one needs to talk to children because before they get addicted, because a lot of my son's friends unfortunately became addicted to cigarettes. And what happened with that addiction is that addiction to cigarettes leads to addiction to other things, addiction to alcohol, addiction to sex, addiction to. So once you become addicted, it's very difficult for you to, talking about boundaries, it's very difficult for you or for the young person to say no because they'll be in company with other people who are there's a shisha group and smoking group, they're all together. But once they stop and they know why they stopped, then they'll also avoid that company that's also smoking. And it becomes a very expensive habit when they're young. When they go to university, I remember when my son went to university, he said, I thank God I don't smoke, mom, because my friends who smoke, they say it's so expensive, especially in America, to buy those cigarettes. It's so expensive. They come to buy cigarettes here in Africa. So if you don't want your child to drink, explain to them why. Talk to them, explain to them, yeah, why it's not good to drink, what it does scientifically, yeah, because these are children, they're thinking, they're reasoning. Don't threaten them. Don't tell them, I'm going to kick you out of this house. Yeah. If you smoke and you drink, I'm going to kick you out of this house. You're not my child. Oh, we are Christians in this family. We don't drink. We don't smoke. Look, this is not about you. This is about your child. So, like this gentleman said, come down to the level of your child. And I'm glad because I learned this actually from my grandmother who used to do this. She used to stoop to my level to help me understand many things. So I think you need to stoop down to your child's level and help them, become a friend to them, help them understand. And it starts from when they're very small. Don't punish a child for every single thing that they do wrong. Certainly do not do that. Talk to them. Keep talking until your voice is hoarse. Yeah. Mothers, especially, have been given 25,000 words just by God. Yeah. Those ones are supposed to be spoken to children, most of them.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and after talking to them, establishing boundaries and rules in a calm manner, in a clear, establishing clear boundaries in a calm manner. You should also reward or praise them when they make progress uh, in adhering to those boundaries. So it's something that means that you should be watching. You're very connected with what's happening and stuff like that. Even that, like Queen Mo talked about the point where her son determined that he was going to no longer smoke shisha. Actually, shisha is banned in Kenya. They arrest people when they take it there. It's actually banned because they found that apart from tobacco, they were adding other things, substances in
Other
it,
kinds of
very,
chemicals.
very
Yeah.
high. Yeah, and then of
Okay.
course
Okay.
the vapes came in, and those are really bad for you.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Talking about
So,
Susan, talking about praising kids, one should never hesitate to compliment their children.
yeah,
Yeah. Compliment, in
yeah,
fact, over complimenting kids is okay. Just do it. Yeah. Because it's called positive reinforcement. Yeah,
yeah,
in other places. Positive reinforcement works not just for children, but even for adults. Even for if you're a boss in an office, positive reinforcement will get your workers to work harder, longer, better.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
very motivational, it's really helpful, and it helps them to stay out of trouble. So for children, always reinforce them, always positively reinforce them. Yeah. Help them to know that they're just the best child ever. They're not even like those other children that you see outside there. And
For
you and
sure.
your child can actually even evaluate the behavior of another child who's exactly their age,
Yeah,
and say, yeah.
yeah. So apart from developing positive discipline strategies, it's important to spend quality time with your children. That is, you spend, especially teenagers, because that's a very, they're exposed to so much now. We have parents really struggling with some of the issues that they're being exposed to on social media, and perhaps in some schools, depending on which schools and where they went to school. We've seen a lot of stuff in the US about parents confronting and suing the education boards because of some of the stuff they're teaching their parents in school, their children in school without their permission. I remember here in Kenya, there was a hue and cry about sex education being incorporated in the syllabus. Parents really wanted to understand its context, and I think it eventually was not incorporated, at least in the way that they wanted to do it. I think UNICEF was one of the organizations that was pushing that. And perhaps in today's Trump 2 era, it would have been considered woke and something that is damaging to the developmental needs of a child. So spending quality time with the children, that is at home, meaningful interactions, free from distractions. Parents sometimes we're say we're going out with our children or we're spending time with our children, but you're on the phone, you're reading a newspaper, you're not giving your child the attention that they need. It's not about quantity, it's about the quality. You can do lots of stuff, go do many things with your child, but you're not paying any attention to them. So it's not quality time. So the time you need to spend with your child is quality time. And that is also to express love and affection consistently. Um, the hugs, the touching and sort of physical connection is very, very, very important. I know, for instance, the orphan children, especially when they're babies, there are some institutions like here in Kenya where you can go and they encourage people to go, members of the public to go and just hug the babies, just to hold them. These are children whose parents are no longer with us. So they just go in and you just go and spend a morning or an afternoon just holding different babies. And it makes a lot of difference. And the other thing is establish effective communication. We need to pay attention to what our children are saying. What are their words? What is their tone? What is their body language? So if we're not able to capture, it's easy to say something and not mean it, or to say something to provoke the parent so that to trigger you, or to say something which is, if you ignored it, you can't afford to ignore it, because it's pointing to maybe a mental health issue which needs to be addressed professionally, or it's showing that you're engaged because you've understood that this child either feels very strongly about this or is asking you, what do you feel or what do you think about this particular topic? I know there are some really tough conversations children and parents have, and as parents we really have to have those conversations which at the which are age appropriate. Of course, you can't describe, depending on the subject, you can't just give some details which a child can, depending on the age of the person, cannot even understand or relate to.
Yeah.
The other thing is, yeah, so you have to show that you're fully engaged. I remember my last born child, she was really good at making sure that when she was having a conversation with you, that you're looking at her. So if your eyes wandered off, she would move my face back so that I would have to look at her. And she was quite young when she was doing this. She was in the nursery school. So
Wow.
she'd move my face back, you know. I remember, Mom, look at me. So she's telling me something, and maybe I'm distracted. I'm looking at something, and this business of mother saying we can multitask. Sometimes it's not such a good thing with children, so we need to to pay attention to what they're saying. So they want that eye contact. So she would move my head physically, and I remember she did that. And even up to today, she's in her 20s. And we still have those conversations where, she insists on the eye contact. And I appreciate that.
I know that little
Um,
girl, and she has very intense gaze. Is that the reason why? She has a
no, she
very
wants you to,
beautiful, she's a beautiful girl with a very intense gaze. I didn't know that actually. Oh, okay, so I should also make sure that I'm staring right at her when I'm talking to
No, when
her.
you, yeah,
You know,
when you're
Ida,
talking to,
let me read a few comments here and also welcome
yeah,
people to the show. Ida, welcome to the show. Fia, welcome to the show. Ida is saying if there's one class that every parent and caregiver should take, it's how the brain develops from birth through the teenage years. This class can help shape the positive discipline strategies. Wow. How the brain develops from birth through the teenage years. Wow. Wow. Interesting. Yeah. I wonder. I wonder about that, really. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
the non-violent ways to discipline. And when we're talking about boundaries, it's also about. I remember when I was doing a lot of work on children's rights, we were saying that no physical violence, but what you can do is withdraw a privilege. So a privilege. So for instance, if they they watch TV from this time to this time, or they have this much time on their you know uh, their computers or whatever, and you withdraw it, and because it's something that they love to do, they feel the punishment. But you should never punish a child in a way that is affecting their rights. So for instance, locking them in a room, or refusing to, denying them a meal, that is abusive behavior, and that is not right. But withdrawing a privilege is okay. Those were some of the things we were, that were being shared around at that time, for as alternatives. Because one of the things we mustn't do is say stop doing this, and then we don't suggest alternatives. Because if we don't suggest alternatives, the habit that you're trying to stop will continue. Yeah, will continue. So the other thing
On
is
the other,
to
Susan,
enhance.
on the other end of that, and denying a child food is the other one of forcing them to eat. Some parents actually punish their children, especially children who like to eat. Or let's say a child has stolen food. You'll set the whole plate or let's say a child, you're making chapatis. Yeah, chapatis, those bread. Huh? So you're making those chapatis, and this child comes over and takes one chapati and takes off, takes another chapati, takes off. Just one, you're cooking them and they're going, yeah? And then you get so frustrated and you say, you know what? Come here, eat all the chapatis, 10 chapatis at a go. That's also very dangerous. Another thing is force feeding children. One of the most terrible things that you could do to a child is to force feed them. Yeah. And we know certain people who have told us that they lost their child to force feeding. One of them is a media personality whose house help held the child's nose and poured porridge into the mouth of the baby. Yeah. And the baby choked and died. Yeah. When the mother was working. So let me tell you guys, force feeding is one of the most dangerous things that you can do to a child. And even forcing them to eat when it's time. You say, it is time to eat now. Just ask yourself, when in this world have you yourself exposed yourself to those types of rules yourself? Do you walk around with a watch that says it is now 1 o'clock, it is time to eat? It is now 6 o'clock, it is time to have. It is now 10 o'clock, I must eat. Whether you're hungry or not, you must eat. That's actually abuse. It's child abuse. Yeah, it really is child abuse. Like when I had my child in the US. I remember I got a lot of education from the nurse who used to come to me because I was a single mom, and she was teaching me ways of feeding my child. So one of the things she says is place the food in front somewhere where reachable, put like some fruits on a table, leave it there, put some vegetables cut up in small pieces on a table for a little child. Yeah, leave it there. The child will just go in and out and come and pick. Before you know it, the plate is empty. Yeah. You just keep replenishing. Just let the fruit basket be at reach. Let it not be over the dining table where a little child cannot reach and get a banana. Yeah. So I think those are the kinds of things, just have the little plate of food available to them there. And in some cases, like there are some children eat at different rates as well. And by the way, the food should be a pleasant experience to children. It should be pleasant. It shouldn't be something that they dread. Because immediately that you set the food in front of a child, they start crying. It goes to show that there's some trauma associated with that food. There's a traumatic experience that they experience with eating, with food. Or maybe they don't even enjoy eating, they don't like food. So, another thing is to learn how to present food in interesting ways to children. So, instead of, for example, just cutting up like, for example, mixing things, children, they don't like mixed stuff. They don't like when you take vegetables and you mix peas and carrots and this and this. No, they want the peas on their own, the carrots on their own. And by the way, many children also like these things when they're raw, when they're not cooked, when they're handheld. Yeah, individual. So they like the bright colors. They will eat the peas if it's by itself. They'll eat the peas on their own. They'll eat the carrots on their own. And it's your responsibility as a parent to make the child enjoy the presentation of the food has to be attractive to the child. Yeah. Like I remember when I was trying to get my child to eat broccoli when he was 4 years old. Yeah. And I would tell him, okay, I think now it's time to eat the bushes. Yeah, let's go eat the bushes. And he says, oh, let's put some lemon on the bushes. So we don't call them broccoli, we call them bushes. Yeah. So we'll be eating the bush. And for him, that would be very exciting to be eating bushes. Hmm? So those are the ways that, ideas. I had to be very creative to try to help my son eat vegetables. Yeah. It's not an easy thing to make children eat vegetables, but usually they like them. There's some they like, there's some they don't like. And in some cases, some of the vegetables that they don't like is an indication that they're not supposed to eat them. Like, for example,
Yeah,
peas. There are many children who are actually allergic to peas. So if they
yeah,
don't like them, most likely they're allergic to them. You may not be
mm,
allergic to them as a parent, but the child is. Yeah.
yeah,
They don't like honey, and you're giving them honey. They're not supposed to be eating honey. Yeah. And you're
mm,
insisting. And then you end up in the hospital and you wonder why. The child always has an upset stomach, always crying, and you don't understand. You're mashing peas there you're doing mashed peas and bananas and all kinds of rubbish for the baby. And when you give it to the baby is screaming all night because they're having a problem digesting the peas, which are very high in protein. So you need to get with a nutritionist and understand foods and food allergies for babies as well.
that's
Milk is
for
another one
sure.
as well.
Yeah, milk too. Milk, honey, high proteins are a real issue. So the last thing, or rather uh, there are three more points to enhance your parenting skills. We need to keep trying to educate ourselves as parents, see what is out there, what's good, sift through the information, see whether it makes sense to you, because that's the most important thing. Uh, Try to see whether it makes sense to you, and if it's right for if it resonates well with you, it's something that you can try to use. So you work on yourself. It shows that you care about the relationship with your child. You stay informed about developments in bringing up children and how to handle issues and tensions in the family. And you assess your own parenting practices. I don't know how many of us can really sit down and say, oh, we realize that we shouldn't have done that, or and stuff like that. Um, and apologizing to our children perhaps when we overreacted to something, or didn't react in the right way. Showing them integrity by character. They watch what we're doing and they learn. And being able to apologize, acknowledge you've made a mistake is actually a good thing. It's not a bad thing. Like we said earlier, when you have the baby, you've given the baby and told good luck, and that's it. So you have to to figure to figure things out, and so you
Yeah,
monitor and
yeah, yeah.
adjust as necessary. So you should be very intentional about implementing discipline models. So, like we talked about earlier, those discipline models have to be understood. The child needs to
Hmm.
know that when you do something wrong, this is the process. And so, you know, and then you notice the changes in behavior, either which will cause alarm, or you can see they're improving or they've understood your position. And then you seek professional help as necessary, where you notice that this is something that is beyond, or something is developing or manifesting into something that you can't manage at the home level. So, as parents, we need to be really, really observant. We need to come up with ways. spare not the rod and spoil not the child does not mean that you beat the child. It means that you have to raise a child in with some discipline, and otherwise the world will teach the child. We know, we have met these children. We'll talk about that, about children who are so badly badly behaved, and it's because the rod was spared, was was spared, and that means there was no discipline. Nobody was responsible for that child. That child was neglected, so they don't even know how to perhaps speak to adults. Yeah, how they don't know how to speak to adults. You've met those children, and they keep shocking you because they don't know how to speak to adults. They don't realize that you can't just refer to them and call them "Hey you," or that sort of thing, and they're very
Or they come barging in, like for example, they're running and they don't know that they should stop and move on the side. Those are things that we were taught. Nowadays, children run right into you. Yeah. Can I
yeah.
share something on the screen?
Yeah, but before you do it, there was a really funny English comedy where there was a son who was a very big fellow, but he seemed to be a bit of a
Oh, yeah.
simpleton. What was that? What was that comedy called?
Oh, My Family, is it?
Something like that. So I think that
Mhm.
one of the parents was a doctor. Was it the dad was a doctor or
Uh-huh.
something like that? And I'll never forget the scene where, and he was over 20. I think he was in his early or mid 20s, and
Hmm.
he would get frightened in his room or something and come and jump into his parents' bed. Just barge into the room
I
and
remember that.
do you remember that?
I remember that very well. Yeah. I remember him. He had this bushy hair.
Yeah,
Not
I
bushy.
can't remember.
Well, he's a white boy, but his hair was all fluffy all over. They tried to
Yeah,
replace him and they couldn't replace him. He's such a fantastic actor. Yeah. I
yeah,
think it was called My
yeah.
Family.
And he was over
Yeah.
6 feet tall, and he's jumped
Yeah.
into.
So tall. I remember. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
You
go ahead.
know, it's yeah, it's nice when kids feel confident and comfortable to come and sleep in your bed. It's actually really good when you see that a child can come into your bed anytime. It's a good thing. They feel secure, they feel attached. And that's why, like in many African traditions, there's this book called Nisa, Nisa. It is about the Kalahari, the people of the Kalahari Desert, in Botswana. And the people, what do we say, the Bushmen of the Kalahari Desert, yeah, and they're kind of like the Maasais of Kenya. But what was interesting is that the mothers breastfeed their children until they're standing straight. They're standing up tall and breastfeeding on their moms. And eventually, at about the age of 8, that is when boys get separated from boys get separated from girls. Yeah. And the boys have to join the men. And you see big kids, crying like children. Their mothers are carrying them when they're tall with long legs. They're like 8 years old and they're carrying them. But at some point now, they now have to get off and go and join their dad and go learn how to hunt and learn the ways of men or the ways of, yeah. So we don't have to wean our children off according to the books. Every child has its time. Every child is unique. Some children are ready earlier, some children are ready later. So give your child that opportunity to be ready to leave your side. Yeah. And if of course it gets a bit too much, 80 years old is a bit much. But that's just how it works in the Kalahari. It works there. So let me share something with you guys here.
Yeah. Let me just add what I was saying about
Oh,
that
okay.
comedy. I just want to
Oh,
talk
oh,
about
you're
that.
not done with that. I'm sorry about that, Susan.
Mm,
I
Yeah,
thought
I
you
just
were
wanted to
done.
mention,
Okay. Mm-hmm.
I was raising it because definitely there was an issue with the way they had raised that young man. He was not able to assess that there are times when you can come into the parents' room. You need to knock on the door before you come in, and certain etiquette. So he was breaking all the rules, and he was
Oh,
um
okay.
he was an adult. So you can't really just come as an adult and jump into your parents' bed. That is not something that you would expect. So his behavior was very sort of uh, you know it was
Erratic.
interesting. Yeah, it's like he was not he was not able to absorb, either because of maybe he had some issues in developmental issues, but uh, maybe he didn't. And if he
Yeah,
didn't have
actually, he
those,
was very strict. He was very different from the other kids. So it looked like he was a late bloomer. And he was also a
yeah, so
joker. There's some children who are jokers like that.
yeah, but if, and not being able to tell these are the boundaries, So clearly
Yeah.
the parents had not set that boundaries, that you can't just come into the room. You have to knock. And you can't just come and jump into our bed like you're 6 or 7 years old. You cannot jump into our bed. You are now an adult male, you know. So I was just talking
Just
about the
imagine.
boundaries in that context. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. That's really true. That's really true. And the thing is, though, if you put it into context of the UK, because that was a UK comedy, wasn't it? It was a British comedy. If you put it in the context of the UK, one of the problems of the UK houses is that they don't even have locks on their doors, not even in the main bedroom, not even in the parents' bedroom. So children can just walk in anytime, and so you might find that you're sleeping there with your husband. In the morning, you were two, in the night, you were two, but in the morning, you're four. You don't know how those kids ended up in there. So let me share this with I can share it now, yeah, Susan? All right, good. Let me share this with you guys. Yeah. Okay, so these are reminders that parents need to hear. Unique, embrace their quirks, talents, and interests. Play isn't just fun, it's essential. Patience is key. Be patient with their progress. Celebrate small victories. You can't pour from an empty cup. Take care of yourself physically, mentally. By the way, that's a very, very important video, by the way, guys. That's a very important video, that you have to self-care as a parent. You have to care for yourself too. You cannot, like she said, you cannot pour from an empty cup. My father used to say, you can only give what you have. You can't give more than what you got or what you have inside you as a parent. So if you were socialized wrong, then you're going to have almost nothing to give your children. Yeah. So maybe you might want to aim to be child free, or to work on yourself first before having kids, because you don't want to be pouring to children coming into the world from an empty place, from a place of emptiness. Yeah. And abuse. Let me see if there is any comments in the screen in here, because I don't want to miss your comments. You guys go ahead and share your comments and your experiences with parenting. They're always good to share. I also want to show you some of the bad behaviors of teenagers, like in the UK, for example. Okay. Yes, I'll be showing you quite a bit here.
Was found on one of the teens' phones, which helped convict the group. They were jailed for a total of 77 years between them.
Sorry. Let me start
These
again.
teens danced and celebrated after stabbing and shooting a man at Hackney Central Station. The 20-year-old victim was shot and stabbed multiple times in broad daylight. A video of the group dancing was found on one of the teens' phones, which helped convict the group. They were jailed for a total of 77 years between them. These teens danced and celebrated.
Now look at that, guys. Those are teenagers, yeah, who are celebrating stabbing a child. I remember, I'll tell you guys a story. I had a job. I got a job offer and I went to work in the UK. Yeah, my son was 17 years old. I had a very good job. But the key was my son was in a boarding school here, in a good school, but I was out there. And I was actually planning to relocate this child, this teenage child of mine, to the UK. This is before I came to find out that there's so much stabbing going on in London. Black children stabbing each other in their bedrooms. Gangs. There's so much gang violence in London that is not talked about. You don't hear about it in Kenya. But when you get there, it's all over the news. So many children getting stabbed. You heard just the other day, there were 3 children that were stabbed by a teenager in London. And there's a teenage boy also who was stabbed by another child. When I used to go to church in London, there was a congregant in there whose sister's son got stabbed and killed. And you know what? This child was dropped he was actually going to talk about, he was actually going to give a pep talk about nonviolence. And then when he was coming out, he was stabbed by gang members. Yeah, this is an African child. So this is a problem in the UK, a big problem of gang violence. Young people who are, I think even if Fia wants to say something, she should right at this point if she's here with us. I would love to hear from you guys what you think about that. Why is it that our children are resorting to violence against each other abroad? The diaspora kids, why are they doing this? African kids, most of them are from Africa. Yeah, most of them have African parents. They have immigrant parents. Immigrant parenting is a difficult thing. So, Susan, anything you want to say there?
Yeah, I think when you look at that video and you're seeing that sort of that behavior, which is not acceptable at all under any circumstances, their inability to even assess that their behavior is wrong. They were looking more at the very fact that it was recorded on video as a video and then uploaded to social media. Those are the people they wanted to impress, and they wanted to impress them with this really, really heinous act, and they're paying for it dearly. It has affected and impacted their lives, for the rest of their lives. I mean, we're talking about collective 77 years or something like that, and there were 4 of them. By the time any of them comes out, even if it's shared, or because that was a sum total of the number of years they were given collectively, they will have lost their youth, a big part of their youth, and at what cost? And the fact that they did stab this child, I mean, just shows that they were completely like emotionally detached. Their behavior was completely unacceptable, and it shows that perhaps the parental their parents were not able to give them the guidance they wanted. We might found that when they did their research and background studies, that the children were from either of the two categories, the disorganized, insecure and disorganized parents, and so they were seeking attachment, and so they show a clear lack of attachment behavior, confusion and disorientation in their interactions with caregivers, or they were you know because that's what it looks to me, their severe behavior, their inability to really even and these the disorganized ones are the ones who come from families where they're neglected or abused. So you might find that their parents were neglectful, otherwise perhaps this behavior would have changed. But to what extent, some of the influences on behavior now among the young people, we know it is social media. We know it's social media, and it's sort of encouraging people to do these outlandish and crazy things just to get the likes and the what do you call it, the likes and the views. Yeah, the views. And I'm sure by the time they were arrested, the views, if we had seen the views, I'm not sure we can see them, they had got a lot of views. And there's some very, very dark sides, very, very dark sides. And you see, if the parenting was good, they'd also have been told to avoid watching those sites. The parents would have been aware that these teenage boys were actually watching some of these sites, and they would have stopped them from watching them and sort of tried to discipline them so that they stop watching them. But the likelihood that these were children also who the parents were not watching over them, they were not controlling them or even checking. Bring me to the point of the siblings. Could they have been golden children, or the royal brat, or the bully, or the addict? Yeah. Which of these? Because I came across the types of siblings people have. There's the golden child and the scapegoat. And then the second one is the royal brat and the wise owl. So the golden child is one who follows toxic patterns of the parents. The parents are narcissistic, and they're quite full of themselves. And their sibling, if they have one, is likely to be the scapegoat, because they've completely refused to follow the path that is taken by their narcissistic family members. And so they learn empathy because at the end of the day, even they're being punished or disciplined because they're not sympathizing enough with the golden child. Then you have the royal brat and the wise owl. The royal brat never learns how to work through their impulses. So they just do things on impulse. And it looks to me like some of these children could fit into that category. They were bullies. They were bullies. Uh, and so they bully the wise owl. So the wise owl is a complete antithesis of this one. They're responsible, they're mature, they're level-headed, they're disciplined and reliable. And then the royal brat is completely unreliable, has no impulse control, just does what he exactly wants to do, and bullies the wise owl. And then we have the bully and the victim. So this is one who this the bully has no control over the parents, right? So he bullies his siblings, and in fact, the bullying can be so serious. It can be, all forms of abuse, including physical, mental, emotional, psychological abuse. So you have the bully, and then you have the victim in that type of context. And then we have the addict. The addict who's taking drugs and all that, and the sibling who's an enabler who tries to cover up for the addictive behavior of their sibling. So they feel a need to look after that sibling who has this addictive behavior. And as Queen Mo said, addiction is all types, not just alcohol. It could be food. It's just bad the behavior that is in the extreme, whatever it is. Whether it's these children, some of the things we know they do is they're always on the playing. Either they're playing games online, or they're binge watching all type of things, and getting into some spaces they really shouldn't be getting into. Then we have the ghost and the hungry child. The ghost is an emotionally distant child, sort of just there but not really there, is not really seen. And then the hungry child is the one who lacks love and looks for it elsewhere. So these children that you're describing sound to me that they were bullies even at home. Perhaps if you check the history of their behavior,
Yeah.
they were completely, they were beyond the parents' control. If the parents were interested, or the parents were completely disinterested, so these children morphed into these type of characters. Yeah.
My goodness, that is so shocking, Susan. It's very, very, very shocking. So Ida is saying that immigrant parenting is the most difficult challenge for both parents and children. Parent schedules are in conflict, with societal expectations for participating in community activities. That is true. So listen to this video that I want to show you here that is talking about exactly that. And this particular person has a very a very strong opinion, a very like skewed opinion, about what you should do in that case. Yeah, what you should do. So let me just try and make this full screen, and then you can watch and listen.
Be man, you be woman, you they stay for abroad, you dey for Europe, and you get children for Africa. Do not make the mistake to bring them to abroad. Okay, if your children are underage, your children dey primary school, they secondary school, do not bring them to abroad. Some of these children will they go give you better wahala, wey go make you dey run eta esketa, and you go dey feel say na your village people na dey against you. No, na the government, na the law go dey against you. Because for Europe here, we no get right over our children. For Europe here, parents no get children. Children belongs to government. Okay, as an African parents in abroad, if your children do what is wrong, what is not right in your eyes or by anything, if you discipline your children, you will still be the one at fault. You will still be the one to receive the gbege from the government side, from the countryside people. The age where they are advisable for parents to bring their children from Africa to abroad. Now the age where you know say they don't finish secondary school. The age where you know say government no go fit take them. The age where you know say they don't grow past all these small children. You understand? Let me make an example. There is one of our beautiful lady called Chante. I follow her on Facebook many years ago. I'm still following her. Many of you know her, you know her story. Una see the age where they bring her son come abroad. This lady, they live for Italy, and he married to a very handsome Onibo man, which I think, but I never see the Onibo before. But I know say na Onibo man she married, and she get other pikin also. Many of una see the age where they bring that his son come abroad. These are the perfect age. A lot of people today will bring their children, younger children, come for abroad. Many of these children, they will countryside people because they not fit, they want discipline their children. It can't resolve the problem. Countryside can't collect those children for them. Abroad, yeah, it takes the grace of God for parents to raise children. Anybody way born for abroad or way get small children for abroad, where their children can't grow, reach the age of secondary school, they can't finish secondary school. They need to go, they thank God. It's not easy. Raising children in abroad and raising children in Africa is two different things. As an African parent, you will see a lot of things going on with your children once they are growing. They'll do a lot of things where you not like. The worst part of it is that you cannot discipline those children. You don't have right. Your right has been paralyzed by the law. You cannot discipline your children here in this abroad. It is impossible. It is not allowed. If not, the wahala where you go find yourself, you go even they pray, may they not put you for kiri way pass you. There was one of our papa before we live for Obodo UK, where be say don't come out now. He say her daughter do something where they wrong. He can't tell her daughter say make he nida. So he can't do something for computer. So the next day, the pikin can't go school, can't go tell them for school. Say, see what your papa do. If papa tell her, say, may you nida. Now they can't ask her, when your papa tell you, may you nida, what your papa can't they do? He say, papa, they computer, they do something on computer. The man say from that moment, he not see pikin again. Now from school, they for market the pikin. He say, if you come they fight for his life, may he not go kiri way pass him because they say not good. And forget the thing where he say they measure, where they say that thing mean. You understand? For him to tell his daughter to nida, he can they do something for computer. Number one, he said they say that child negligence. Number two, he said they quote about 3 or 4 things. I don't forget how they say name for them. He said that God not be small thing. There be what may he go kiri put for that matter. He battle. Upon not say they still collect the children. Oh, they not live on like that. They still want making go for kiri. He said that God now is saver for that case. So a lot of people they like that. We be say they not get the boldness to come on social media where they don't market their children, or because of little or one mistake where they do. So for your peace of mind, allow your children to finish primary school, secondary school for Africa. If you want to bring them come, let them come to abroad to come and do their masters. It is better. It is not easy to raise children, to born children, to come bring them come abroad there with hard their money, stress and everything. At the end, they'll still come end up for government hand. There was one content creator, I don't know what she called herself because that woman herself, I don't understand.
Susan is laughing her head off. What are you laughing at, Susan?
She said she didn't understand what that other content creator was saying. Anyway, I think my view is,
Nigerians, their language. I mean, they
is
deserve an award. You know, they deserve an award.
is that pigeon? What she's
Yeah.
speaking Creole or
Raising
pigeon?
children raising children in abroad, no be wahala. It's
Yeah, there
really
was so
difficult.
many.
Wahala
Yeah,
means it's difficult to raise children abroad.
yeah,
Basically, all she's saying. Yeah.
yeah.
Let me just explain to people what she's trying to say. You know, she's talking about the fact that parents literally don't have rights to discipline children in Europe, literally, you know, and that many children, when they're brought when they're very young, there's a risk of losing them to the state, to the government, because of small types of, you know, what they call, what she calls, you know, small things. Like, for example, denying a child maybe the use of a computer. maybe, or something like that. And Fia is also saying, is she talking about uh, the type of discipline some parents go overboard and cause physical and mental harm? I don't know, Fia, what she's talking about, but generally what I know is that even if, like, for example, if your child is seen in class with torn clothes, a torn uniform, like their school uniform is in disarray, that they look like they really haven't had a bath for a while, you could be considered to be negligent of your child, and you could easily lose that child to the state. Yeah, so that's the kind of thing. So Susan, go ahead, respond.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, I think those are some of the cultural shocks that um, Africans have when they go to the West, and they go with their families and they go with their children, because there are certain protections of the law there. There are also protections actually now, because the children's the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child has been signed. I think it's the most signed international convention in the world. So that, at least that was some years ago. There may be some changes now. So most countries have signed it, and they try to adhere to those rules about how to manage children, and they discourage physical discipline of children, and advise different methods like the ones I talked about earlier.
Yeah.
So the here we also, I mean, the African countries, we do have the child helplines and stuff like that. In the West as well, they have them, and they're very responsive. So
Mm-hmm.
if you make the mistake of smacking your child, you can end up in court, and the child can be
Mm-hmm.
taken away from you. So those
Mm-hmm.
are some of the things we do know, that some years ago, parents who went overseas with their children would actually send them back to boarding schools here, because they said, I cannot do anything about, if my child is unruly, I can do nothing about it.
Mm-hmm.
So in fact, I even know of a situation where the one parent came home with the children, because they realized that the state and the rules were interfering too much in their ability to raise their children.
Mm-hmm.
The protections of the law are so great that it was, what you call, a paradigm shift for the parents coming from, say, an African country, to adjust to the fact that they couldn't even, do certain things, even maybe shouting at the child. You end up, the neighbors will call the police, and there'll be all that sort of thing going on, and
Mm-hmm.
they're
Yeah.
not too strict. So it causes those tensions. I think she must have had witnessed or had a personal experience, because she seems to be deeply wounded by that, and trying to suggest that don't bring the child there while they are minor. When they're older and they're, beyond
Yes.
that age of child
Yeah.
abuse, being 18 years and over, then it's a different scenario altogether. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because she was saying, sort of like, because we're not allowed to punish our children physically, then they end up being unruly and they're out of control. So it's very difficult for
Mm-hmm.
you to raise children. Some other work I was doing, I don't want to say where, but again, those were the sentiments of the people. They said the children have run amok, literally, because we cannot discipline them, and
Mm-hmm.
saying we're not able to have conversations, we're not able to do anything with them. They have just literally run amok, even in our homes, in our workplaces, or wherever. At the schools, the teachers can't teach them, and all that. So even when you try to introduce ways to reduce issues of, say, drug abuse among them and stuff like that, it becomes a problem.
Yeah. So that is true, Susan. We talked about that actually once before. It's crazy, yeah. So let me show you something else. Let me share something else with you guys. Today is the day for sharing, man. I love sharing my screen with you. It makes me feel really techie. Okay, let's go.
In diaspora, not just Germany, but in diaspora as a whole. Right now, a new school year is about to begin, the school year 2024-2025. And I would like you to please start taking care of your child academically. I'm saying academically because a lot of you are very good parents when it comes to clothing, feeding, and everything. But you see this academic, right? You're actually lacking to be in the life of your children academically. You do not attend children meeting. You do not attend meeting with teacher. You do not respond to emails or even read your child notice book. And I think this is actually very poor. Because recent time, a lot of parents have been complaining, hey, my child is being prohibited or is being discouraged from doing a studium rather than trying to talk him into to do an house building, or they don't want him to do this, do that. Most times, it's actually because your child is not performing well in school. This is actually a truth that we do not want to accept, but we have to, so that we can work towards so that we can work towards correction, right? As a parent, right, you have to try as much as possible. I know you're working, I know you're doing 2-3 jobs, right, just for you to put food on the table. But what is the use of all this if your child is not so successful, if your child's future is not secured? That is why I want to say, please, this new school year, try to be more in the life of that child academically. When your child comes back from school, try to read 1 or 2 things. If you cannot understand, then I will please suggest that you go for NAC Hilfe. NAC Hilfe is actually a lesson, after school lesson. That is just what it is, after school lesson, where your child can go. Your child can also get some help, if your child has reading. And it's very important that you also take the concern of your child's teacher seriously. Some your children teachers will tell you, hey, your child needs this. You'll be like, no, I know my child. I know you know your child, but it's very important that you also have an understanding on what is going on, that you assist that child. If you want your child to study unbedingt, your child must be a lawyer, a doctor. I am very proud. I would like that. I would like to walk up to someone I'm seeing an African doctor handling me, right? But you have to start working from now. From now, not when it's about to write the Abbey or start to write the Mittlerer Reife. Then
We get the point, right? Yeah. So what that lady is talking about is the fact that many parents are working so many jobs. They're so busy trying to put food on the table, especially in the diaspora, that they don't have, and even over here on the continent, that many parents are kind of like they're neglecting their responsibility in terms of ensuring that children get, that they get support at the school, that they see you there, that you show interest in what they're doing, that when they have performances, you go there, that you are a participant parent. What's going to happen is that your child is just going to be progressed to the next classes, and at the end of it, you'll find they don't even hardly know how to write their name. That's what's going to happen, because they rarely allow the children to repeat classes. Yeah. So I think that lady said something, yeah, just like Ida said, very well said indeed. Very well said. Yeah. That we don't, we cannot delegate responsibility of looking after babies, after children. I remember my father, he used to tell me, you cannot raise a child by remote control. He used to say that when I used to travel a lot. He would tell me, okay, and who is going to look after your son? And you tell me you cannot raise. Parenting is a sacrifice. Yes. Once you become a parent, yeah, you've signed a contract for this child. You need to look after them for the rest of their lives, and you'll be required, to varying degrees throughout their lives. So I think it's important to at least pay attention. And if you cannot go as yourself, at least send somebody. Always have a representative, but as much as possible, try to show up for your child. It's so important to their self-esteem, and especially for kids who are in the diaspora. They really, first of all, most of them they are already in the minority in the class. I myself have 2 kids in the diaspora who have not been, showing up for, because, people have split roles, split responsibilities. But I know that my husband goes to everything. Yeah. Being a teacher himself, by the way, he also teaches in the same school. So at least one parent, it's not like all parents have to go, but at least the one who can go, be there, try and be there for your child. Show up. It looks like, oh, why should I go and attend that? It's a bit boring. Some people also, many parents have had negative experiences with their schooling themselves. And they don't want to be on the school compound. They don't want to see teachers. They only want to pay the school fees. In fact, if they can pay by remote control, that school fees they will, and never see. And there'll be usually the parents who pay the whole year in advance and will never be seen at school. They'll send the driver to pick the child up, or the maid or whoever it is to come and pick the child up by bus, whichever way, but they'll never be seen at school. We remember growing up with such kids ourselves, didn't we, Susan?
Yeah, I think this lady was calling out neglect, calling out the neglect in the context of education. The parents not being invested in the success of this child, and not taking them for the extra classes they need, or even understanding the need of the child in order for them to attain or to achieve that dream that they want to achieve. And for sure, the parent is likely to be working, like she described, so many jobs. So there's that job income vision, sort of like vision for the child, attention. And she was leaning toward the fact that there's no point in making all this money if the child is not getting the right support to achieve that educational level that they want to, the academic points that they need to advance further. So it's really about sitting down and strategizing and really understanding the context. And she was saying that the parents really have got that wrong. And you need, we appreciate that it's not easy, first of all, to get a job, and secondly, it's really hard for you to be working perhaps all those hours, so that you're not able to do your child, so that you can provide for them. So it's a bit of a cyclical sort of reason, and perhaps that issue needs to be investigated further. And it's in all contexts, not just the one she's talked about. I think all of them. When parents say that they neglect their children because they're working, what is the real message there? We have a lot of children that come from very, very wealthy families. And like Pimo said, we grew up with them. Even now, they're still there. Very wealthy families, and perhaps the parents are not there because they're working, And so the person who's raising their child is not the parent, but perhaps somebody who has been employed to take care of the child at home. We have the context again in some countries where the parents have moved to work in other countries, and they've left the children in the homes, and they send money for those children. So the school fees comes and all that, but they send money to those children. And what has been happening as a result of that is the children don't actually go to school. They end up throwing parties. And these parties, because they're not really adults, they're that age of teenage or whatever, and they're doing, they're having parties which are real risk to their, to their bodies. They're taking drugs, they're doing extreme things and involving, there's a name for it. I've forgotten what that name is, but I think different countries have a name for those type of parties. And I think that people who are watching know the type of parties I'm talking about, where the children go and there's just young people, and it's completely wild. There's drugs, there's sex, there's everything there, things that, are very shocking or disturbing, and the parents are away working so that this child can go to school, so you want to ask yourself, really, is that really why you're working? If you're not able to make that decision, see, my child is going down a very bad path here. I'm working for all this money, and you have to decide what to do, whether you're going to stop the work so that you can spend more time with your child, because they're actually going down a terrible path. And we know many, it's something that needs to be decided. And then the thing of putting your child now in boarding school, and that's the reason why I'm asking this question. The parents, again, who don't have any time at all for the children, they have the money, right? So they turn these children into camps over the holidays. They don't have time to stay with the children, even during their school holidays. So the child will go to a camp, say in Kenya, a camp in Mombasa for for 10 days, come back home for 1 day. And then they're shipped off to a camp in Rift Valley, come back for 1 day, shipped off to their grandmother's place for another week, come down 1 day, shipped off, and it's a series of camps. And the 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 parents are free as birds, flying all over the world or whatever they're doing, or
Mm-hmm.
even doing other things where the child is not, they didn't cater for that child's activity during the school holiday. They don't really have time. So the
Mm-hmm.
lady raises an important issue about spending all your time working and not taking care of the child. And when I'm
Yeah,
asking the
yeah.
question further, when you're talking about working, are you working because you're looking for that child, or are you working for other reasons? Is there something else that you want out of that work? And it's harming the child.
That is true. That is true. I think Ida is saying new immigrant parents could also be first generation students themselves, whose parents never went to school. It actually becomes a multi layered challenge. And that's true. This is one of the things that was pointed out there that, and I've seen it before, where a lot of the immigrants who are coming in, many of them are not even educated, let alone being new immigrants and the first immigrants. Many of them are not even educated at all. They don't have education, the mothers, many of them. Yeah. So when the children go to school, they don't even know what to look for, how to look for, what to look for in terms of the children's curriculum. Understanding the language is another issue. You see that lady, I think she must be in Germany or something. Yeah. English is an issue. Language is an issue. And then on top of that, there's a culture, there's a values, there's LGBTQ, there's all this. All this gender assignment, gender classes that that the children are being exposed to. Children are being exposed to work culture that is completely foreign to most immigrant families. So actually, parenting as an immigrant family is very, very difficult, let alone the financial challenges. We didn't even talk about finances. This is a very wide topic, and we'll talk about, we cannot cover, it looks like we cannot cover, yeah, parenting in one show. It's not possible. Yeah. So I think we know that there are so many issues, that are affecting, parents today. But we also know that there are many parents who have successfully raised children both on the continent and abroad. And to those, want to say kudos. And we know them, they're on here. And it takes sacrifice, takes a lot of sacrifice. And sometimes it also takes breaking a family, to ensure that the children succeed. Sometimes it has happened. There are many mothers who decide enough is enough. I'm not going to be around this toxic person anymore because I have to ensure that my kids survive and thrive. Yeah, and I really congratulate parents, who decide to do that, or even single parents who decide that they're going to raise a child alone and not include the toxic other partner at all in the raising of the child. Because, the children's success is very important. It's not even about their success, it's the ability to stand on their own 2 feet, which is so important. And many children are not able to stand on their own 2 feet. But all I can tell, and I can encourage parents who have, difficulty or have experienced difficulty or made mistakes in raising their kids, is never give up. Don't give up. Look for ways, because there's always a chance, that child will definitely, that child will grow up, grow out of, like Susan said, it won't happen forever. They'll probably grow out of it. They'll grow up. There are some people who are late bloomers, right into their 30s. And another thing I want to tell parents is that when children get to their past their, to their adulthood, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, if you're still alive, you're still their parent. Yeah. And you should check out on your child, check on them. Like sometimes you hear Susan tell us here, she's had dinner with her newly married son and his wife. That's a very important thing to do. It's important to check on your child. Pick up the phone, call your child, even if they're not in the country, if they happen to be in the diaspora. If they happen to be in the country, call your child, tell them, hey, come over here. I'm making dinner for you tonight. Let's have dinner together. That's your chance to catch up with your child, because there's a lot of young people out there trying to navigate the world without their parents, without any sort of, or even not with their parents, without caregivers, and not just your children. You're not only responsible to your child. In Africa, we're not just responsible to your child. You're responsible to your nieces and nephews as well. Check up on them, talk to them, yeah, encourage them, do whatever you can do. Check on them. Like today, I'll tell you, I did it just because I think I might be a bully, but I checked on one of my nieces and I said, hey, kiddo, do you remember XYZ? Does it remember when you were a child, you used to do this and you used to do that? Because I knew in my mind that this child, or this, she's a child to me, she's an adult now, but I know that she was not comfortable with her career and she wanted a career change. So I was trying to remind her of the things that she used to do as a child, the things that she was really good at. And it just came off my cuff, call her up and remind her. And she says, oh, Auntie, thank you so much for calling and telling me this. Because actually, it's amazing, yeah, that we're very intuitive. It's amazing because I was actually thinking on the same path. So sometimes a child or a young person just needs an adult to remind them of who they are, because you know them longer than they know themselves. So I remember I was telling my son just yesterday to always come to me if he needs to talk to me. Because I used to tell him, look, I used to go to my dad. My dad was my therapist. I realized later that he was my therapist. I used to bounce off ideas on him. And I think he would also come to me eventually, and tell me issues that he's dealing with. And he wouldn't tell me that way, but I would know. He would come make it like a complaint or a question, and I would know that he's dealing with an issue, or he wants an answer to this issue. He's trying to understand something. But me, I would go to him and I would tell him, hey, I'm facing this in my career, because he was a consultant at some time. I'm experiencing this. What do you think? I'm experiencing that. What do you think? It's good to bounce off ideas with your parents, even when you're older. We, and aunties as well, even when it comes to our personal relationships. If you're having struggles, difficulties, it's good to talk to one of the people who are not in competition with you, that you trust, because of course you have to have that trust. You can't just talk to anybody. But I think we have a responsibility to the younger generation, and as much as possible, we, the older generation, need to be make ourselves available to them as well. Don't be so greedy with our time. Yeah, let's make ourselves available and open up our homes, open up our hearts and our homes, because talking over a meal is a good thing as well. Yeah. Okay, I think we're going to wrap up this show. It's been a long one and it's been interesting. We've had people engaging. Parenting is of interest. And I believe that, we just do. We can only, like we said, we can't give from an empty vessel. So remember to look after yourself. You as a parent, a grandparent, an auntie, an uncle, look after yourself, go exercise, eat right. Yeah, this body that we're carrying is a vessel. It needs to be looked after. Our mind, our mental health is very important. We have to be in the right place so that when we're giving advice, or when we are challenged by our child, we know, how to react in a calm manner, like Susan said. Yeah. So, Susan, you have the last word. And thank you so much, guys, in the comment section. We'll be switching off now. Susan, the last word before we switch off and say goodnight to everybody.
Yeah, most certainly. I think as parents, let us make changes where we should. Our relationship with our children is very, very important. The family is the very smallest unit of any society. We always want the best for our children. So we need to look at ourselves and make proper assessments about whether or not we are parenting our children in the right way. It's never too late to parent your child. You can take those steps to build bridges and to make amends with them. And we would like to encourage that, because it really helps them to be better people, to be more, to be better people at the end of the day. They're able to love others, and interact with others in a healthy way. They're able to live better quality lives, and with more happiness and stuff like that. So it's very important for us parents to take responsibility for some of the bad behavior we're seeing from our children, and really, at the end of the day, try to make amends. I think in the US, the fathers actually went to some schools because there was a lot of fighting and a very unruly behavior from the boys. So there was dads at school or something. I can't remember what it was dubbed. And the dads sat down and they came up this roster. And all that bad behavior reduced because the dads were on duty at school. The teachers were teaching, the dads were at school. And that sort
Yeah.
of toned down the unruly behavior. And those were
Yeah.
parents who were taking, accepting, taking, they were being accountable. They were accepting that their absence perhaps
Yeah.
was responsible to some degree, was a contributor to the unruly behavior of the male children or even the children in the school. So let's be responsible as parents. Let's own up to our failures. We're not perfect. We're to err is human, but we can do something about it. We can do something to change the spaces in which we interact with our children. I believe it's never too late to make amends, to build your child, to point out issues, to try and reverse issues. If it's a mental health issue that is making that child behave in such extreme ways, please, please seek professional help. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you, Susan. And on that note, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Ida, Fia. And for those of you who are going to join us later in the recorded version, welcome. Remember to thumbs up our video and join us again on Sunday when we're going to talk about mental health. All right, guys. So good night and
Good
goodbye. Thank
night.
you so much for your
Yeah.
time. Have a good
Thanks
evening
for
and have a
listening.
good day wherever you are. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.